Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out.
Welcome back, dude. You've got better audio this time.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
So we were actually just talking. Sometimes I do this like super impromptu intro thing. I don't know if we did this last time, but we're talking about how sometimes when people don't have headphones, that Zoom cuts out the audio because it like doesn't know who's talking. We were saying that was weird, but I don't know if any Zoom experts know the answer to that. You should put it somewhere.
And I've got a really bad habit of like cutting people off, so I'm trying to get better about it. It's one of the things I'm working on, but it's still a work in progress. We'll just put it that way.
It's weird when you notice those things about yourself. Like I noticed that about myself sometimes, where I can be potentially more honest than I need to be instead of just saying nothing. I've been trying to do that also. And then the other thing I was trying to do. Oh, when things that I think are like something where you think is so simple, it should just like be done, and then understanding that people are like, everybody's brain is different. And sometimes I'm generally a patient person, but occasionally I can be like, are you guys for real right now?
I find that like I like to think I'm a patient person, and I try really hard at it, but there's certain things, there's like certain things that like I lose control over, and I find myself like a minute later I'm like, oh my God, like I blacked out for a second, right? Like I was like, why did I say that? Like, why did I get so worked up about that when other things I'm not? And also I'm much more patient at like at certain times. Early in the morning, if I have like a 7 a.m. meeting, I can be very impatient with my business partners. But like 8 a.m. through like 3 to 5, I'm golden. Like I've got energy, I'm excited, I'm patient, I'm willing to work on things. But like after like 5 o'clock, especially after 7, I mean, I go to bed at like 9:30, so my energy starts to drop at like 7:30. So if I have late night meetings, like it's bad. I'm like so impatient. And
when do you get up?
It depends. So normally I'm somewhere between 5 and 6. Right now I'm at like 5:45, 5:30, but like it moves, especially with like daylight savings time and all that. It's been like throwing things off, but yeah, it's somewhere around there. I don't get up any later than like 6:30, 6:20, something like that is usually the latest that like I'll get up. Depends.
The way you said that makes me think that you don't use an alarm. Your body just
no, I haven't used an alarm in years. No. Yeah, I mean,
Can you hear the yard working?
No, no.
Okay. Keep going then. Sorry if people can hear it.
You got a fancy microphone, so it's perfect. Is that a Rode? What is that?
It's a Blue Yeti, I think. Yeah, Blue Yeti. My friend Tommy gave it to me because he got the updated one. He's a huge gamer, so like his game set is like monitors and microphones and the big headphones, and he got a new one, and he was like, "Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure."
No, that's sick, dude. The voice is like creamy and crispy. It's nice. It's nice.
I know. The first time I listened to it back, even like the old did I have the old Boom one the first time we did it?
I don't remember.
Even with that one, like that one's still pretty decent. But the first time I listened back with this one, I was like, oh, I don't sound as horrible as I thought I did on like in recordings. Yeah, it really does something. Like, and people think, oh, it's just audio. Like, especially when you're just talking. Like, people know the difference for music and stuff. Mm-hmm. But even for talking, it like makes a huge difference randomly.
Yeah, we do. So we've got social media for like our real estate stuff, and I started to get into it, and I'm like listening to videos, I'm making them, and I'm like, man, I can't understand what I'm saying in some of these. So I got this really cheap microphone that's like it's super cheap. It's like $20, right? But it's just a simple little like plug into your phone, and this is all right. It's just like a little Pel, and it just plugs into your audio jack on your phone if you've got a phone that's old enough to have an audio jack. And it's, or, you know, an adapter, but it's super cheap. It cuts in and out, but when it's working, the sound quality is like 10 times better. Of course, that's like 100 times better, but it's amazing the difference. And you can totally hear what I'm saying. In the car, it's much better. And then we leveled up and got these other ones that are a lot better, but it's it's legit. It's
That's
totally big.
interesting. I need to get some mobile ones for some of the soccer stuff that I do. Obviously, because this one I can't be like
Yeah, right,
running
right.
around in the field with it. I have one friend that does like personal training stuff, and she makes videos. And when she's got like a mic, not like it's a mobile one, but it's more like I don't even know how it works. When you plug it into your phone, does it save it on your phone, like in your files folder in your phone? Or like where does it go?
So I just do it. So like if I create a video,
Oh, you just
then
do it with video.
yeah, I'm just doing video. That's right. Yeah. So it's not like I'm not recording like sound or anything different other than outside of a video format.
The only limitation I could see with that is like for athletics, if you're running around, having the cord would be kind of annoying.
No, yeah, you're gonna get like muffled, especially at moving around in your clothes and like the wind. But that's why like they've got different attachments and like wind buffers, like I forget what they call it, but it's like a fur ball. You know, you've seen it on people's shirts. If it's a
Yeah, yeah.
super windy day, like a lot of free divers and spearfishermen, like they'll record stuff out on the boat or on the beach or something like that, and they've got the big puffy piece so that to cut down on the wind.
That makes sense. So I want to go back to your schedule for a bit because I've realized
Yeah.
this recently. You see all these people on the internet saying like you gotta work out or you gotta wake up at 5 and you gotta do this and you gotta do that. And then like when I talk to you, you're up early. Like I get up at like 7:30 sometimes, but like I don't go to bed till 2 hours after. So those 2 hours still exist in the day. It really just depends on what you do with them. So like when do you like do you have a set workout time or do you have a set like because you don't have like a normal
Yeah.
job. So like do you have a set like how do you set your schedule?
Yeah, it's totally different now, and that's why like I've gotten a lot tighter about it all. Um, but I wake up, like I said, between 5 and 6, or let's say 5 or 6:30. But recently, it's been like in the past couple months, it's been 5 to 6, and not much later. And I get up around that time and go straight to the shower, get a 3 minute cold shower in. Everyone's doing it nowadays, so I feel like so freaking conformist and new age to do that now, but it is
I haven't
legit.
start does it work? I
I
haven't
try.
started it yet.
It's legit. It's legit. It's not a joke. Like I wish it wasn't legit because it's so like bro sciencey, but it's only bro sciencey because like the Joe Rogan and all that in the world, like, but there's good science behind it and there's legit like impactful benefits. And a lot of the stuff like, it's hard to feel a difference when you're doing something, when you're trying and tweaking new things and eating different foods. Like I don't notice a big difference physically, but this you do notice. Like you're riding a wave for like several hours. Like you don't need coffee. It's legit. Now everything
Mm,
else has to be legit too. Like if your sleep is trash, I doubt a cold shower is going to change your world. I think you need to. I think sleep is like the number one thing. And so back to the schedule, I make sure I get 7 to 8 hours. If I've gotten 8 hours the day before, the next day I can do 7 hours. I can do 2 7 hour days in a row, but like if I can't do steady 7 7 7. Like I'll catch myself pushing to like 7.5 to 8 hours the following day. And that's why I mean, like I don't wake up at a specific time. There's like an hour window. So I do that and I get up, cold shower, run downstairs, eat my first breakfast, which is like 2 servings of just plain Greek yogurt with fruit and nuts, and then do about like an hour of work, catch up on emails because again, my boss and everything was like over on the West Coast, so catch up on like emails they sent me overnight, or do some real estate or cleaning company stuff, and then have my second breakfast, which is oatmeal, fruit, nuts, and then like chicken breast. And then usually have like an early morning meeting at like 7 or 8, depending upon the morning. And then from there, yeah, it's just steady work until about 2 or 3. And most of my day is occupied by IonQ stuff, my new company that I work for. Most of my day is occupied by them, but like an hour to 2 maybe happens with other stuff because, of course, with real estate or the cleaning company, like stuff just kind of pops up and you have meetings in the middle of the day. And this was the hard thing back when I worked at Dahlgren because I'd have to go into the office and from like 8 to 4, I'd be there, right? And I like anything else. So you're stuck for 8 hours. And it was difficult to like, run these 2 businesses at the same time because a lot of the work is like pop-ups and talking to people. And I have to like, especially with
putting
real
out
estate,
fires.
Yeah, or real estate's like I've got to respond to closing attorneys in the middle of the day, or talk to a real estate agent, or whatever. Like there's little pop-up things that happen, and so that work, being in the office for 8 hours straight, is not a environment that's very conducive to running a real estate company on the side. So that this last year I really pushed hard to find a remote job in my field. So finding a remote job in quantum physics is challenging. But that was my goal. And luckily I achieved it right at the end of the year. Got hired by IonQ, which is a quantum computing company. They're competing with like Google, Microsoft, IBM to build quantum computers. And they hired me like right at the end of the year. And it was just perfect. I sold my old house. I moved in here, and it's been great. My schedule now is just perfect because I can structure it to what I want. So it's fully remote for the most part. I've gone up to, they're based out of College Park, Maryland. I've gone up there 3 times now. And I don't mind the drive. It's just a quick little run up there and see people and see the labs, and it's great. But so for the most part, yeah, I'm here, and my schedule is very blocked. So back to the schedule, I stopped working right around like 2 or 3 to go to the gym for 2 hours. And it's just like I work out for lift weights for like an hour, cardio for like 15 minutes, and then depending on the day, I want to stretch for 15 to 20 minutes right before all that, and then I every other day I hit the sauna for like 20 minutes, and then I'm back home 2 hours later, back in the saddle, and working. And again, a lot of my people are still running and gunning because they're on the West Coast, so there's still meetings and stuff. And that's why I do middle of the day, because I've got a meeting again here at 5 with my boss, and because he's in Seattle, and so it's I'm then working from 5 to like 7, and then 7 I kind of I pop up and make dinner and crush a bunch of food, and then I either chill out, or I've got calls, or I'll sit down and like do a little bit of work until about 9 o'clock, and then run upstairs and call it a night.
Fair enough. So question for you on the gym stuff, because this is something that bugs me. I'll have a set workout that I want to do, and then there's sometimes like, because of soccer, sometimes my body is not in a position to do like the 3 sets of this and 4 sets of that and whatever is written down. Sometimes I'm like, I just need to get into the gym and do some things. And then as it gets to like the hour and I'm like halfway, like I'm behind where I normally would be. And I'm like, I hate myself for not being efficient. Like, how do you deal with that, or do you not deal with that? And like, if you do, how do you not?
But like staying focused at the gym?
Yeah, not even staying focused. Like it'll be like I'm gonna go to the gym after this one, because like my work schedule is not, I don't have like the blockability that you do, just due to the nature of my job. But like if I go, like I was pretty banged up from the game last weekend and from practice on Wednesday, and so like I had some recovery days, and then like Tuesday, a lot of time on a stationary bike and like functional exercises and stuff. And so I don't have the ability to do like upper body, legs, rest, like whatever split that you do, because like I'll have practice Wednesdays.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Coaching this day, games this day, and sometimes like when you need a day to recover and you have a game Saturday, and then the next week you have a game Sunday, and then it screws with the schedule for the rest of the week because you're coaching and doing other things. So like, how do you sort that out and like stay consistent when you do it? Because sometimes I'm like, but then there's also sometimes where I'm like, no, I really should not go to the gym today because my body needs a break.
Yeah. So when I was playing sports, every like multiple times a week, I never lifted. Like I didn't get into lifting until COVID happened, and so it's basically 3 years ago now when COVID happened, and I turned 30, and like my body just like my joints like shut down. Like my hip and knee, like it's bone on bone. And so it became like if I played a game of soccer or basketball, it would take like weeks and sometimes like months to recover. And so I had to totally drop all that, unfortunately. And it was like probably one of the most depressing like periods of my life, just realizing I couldn't play sports anymore. I'm sure like everyone has to hit that at some point. And nobody, especially when you're young, it's like tougher. When you're still 30 years old and you can't go play a game of soccer, like is painful to think about. So I was like, I need something like a distraction. And there's not a whole lot else to do. I hate biking. I thought I'd try to cycle. I hate cycling. I will do it. I'll probably pick it back up, but right now I'm still just not. So I got in the gym and I would start to lift, And since that was all I could do, that's what I focused on. And so I started to learn more about it and try different splits. You know, I would push, pull, legs, and that's still what I do. But I tried the bro splits, like arms, chest, you know, what legs, whatever. So I never had the problem you have, but I would totally feel the same way. Where like, I'm like, well, I have a soccer game on Wednesday. I don't want my legs sore, you know. So I never had to face that struggle. But I remember when I was playing football in college, like in high school, even this was that was definitely like an easy excuse. Like, I'm sore from practice, so I don't want to lift, or I don't want to lift this too hard. And I don't know how to do. I would probably still use those excuses not to lift, because it's not actually my favorite thing to do. But it's like, it's now such a big part of my life that, and the only physical thing I do besides, you know, spearfishing, that I don't miss a day. Like I don't even think about it. Like today was shoulder day. I go in there and I lift shoulders. I don't second guess it. I don't think about it. Well, what about this? What about that? The only time is like when I'm super, super busy and I'm rushed to get work done. Like I have deadlines that for whatever reason, like they've crept up on me faster than normal, and I must work harder today, more hours. I have to skip the gym. So I try not to use like the gym as like a fail safe if I'm done poor time management leading up to this point. Like, let's say Friday, I have to turn in something at the end of the day, and all week, like I just was poor about discipline and time management, that now Friday I have to skip the gym because I did a bad job during the week. Like I won't allow myself to use that as a stopgap to pay, you know, plaster over poor discipline and time management throughout the week. So I try not to do that. But that would be the only case where I'd ever like, but I have done it. So I'm not a saint, or I'm not a freaking machine, but I tried not to. So that's the only place where I get caught up, and I can use excuses for I call it excuse, you know, right? I mean, we do it. That's how, you know. But that'd be the only point where I'd say I can't go to the gym today because I gotta get work done. But it's very rare. I mean, I say I skip the gym like once or twice a month, if we're not counting like vacations and things like that.
Yeah, it's also tough because I need it for the maintenance of like other things. Like, so when I don't go, like I have a game tomorrow, but I need to go and get some level. Like I don't lift heavy and like anymore really. It's all functional stuff for the most part.
Perfect.
And there's some stuff, there's some pieces like I don't think I've squatted more than 225 like two times in the past like 4 months.
Yeah.
And both times have just been like, let me throw on like 275 just to make sure I can still do it. Like, and I've not lost like power.
It's not functional for what you do though. Yeah. I mean,
power.
Yeah.
So it's not really this. It's like the load management almost. And so when you pick up a little injury, and then it's like, you don't want to lose cardio, and that's why the stationary bike is awesome, because it doesn't hit any impact on the joints. But I need to go today to make sure that I get some functional stuff done and make sure everything's activated properly for tomorrow. And then but there'll be some days where I'll get in there and like instead of 2 minutes in between, or like 90 seconds in between sets, I'll be doing like 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, just because like I'm like,
yeah,
that's the thing. But when your schedule is as yours is, though, you don't really have time to do that. You can't really afford that. So how do you, like, when you, like, if you're in the gym and you're like taking, like, is everything on a timer, or are you just like up here, you know?
Yeah, no, everything's on a timer. I do most of my stuff is supersetted. So like today is a push day. A lot of times, like I'll superset arms with, like, if I, like today was shoulders. So I was like doing shoulder raises, and then I get down and I was doing incline press. So I do shoulders and chest on the same day, and I do different workouts. So like, let's say I have 6 total chest exercises and 6 total shoulder exercises. I'll do 3 chest on one day and 3 shoulder on that day, and then I'll do the other 3 for the next days, which is 3 days later. And what I'll do is, you can
hit that in what, an hour, 50 minutes?
Yeah. And so as long as I'm doing, so I do 1 minute and 30 between each. So
I do that as well. The 3 and 3 when I do upper body stuff.
That's it. It's the best way to like to mix stuff, because otherwise, I'm waiting 2.5 minutes between sets if I'm just doing one exercise. So the way to like mix it up is that. So that's how I do it. And it's all timer on my watch. And I mean, there are days where people come in and talk to me, and that's why I don't like talking to the gym. But people will. It's okay. It's good. It's fine. And people
Go
will.
find Garrett and talk to him at the gym.
Yeah, please don't. Uh, no, and it's fine. It's cool. You know, I'm not there to socialize, but I'm not going to tell someone to go like, you know, leave me alone. But people do talk to you for a while, or I'm dealing with something on my phone. I used to work while I was at the gym. Back when I worked at Dahlgren, I always scheduled meetings after I got off. And so I'd do it during my commute, and then a lot of times while I was at the gym, and that would keep people from talking to you, but it would definitely, like, if I had to really think and focus, and especially if I had to look at the screen and go over spreadsheets or something, or analyze a deal or whatever's going on, like I got to focus in. I can't focus on a workout, and it's really tough. And so I could, that was one of the changes I made last year, was like, I refuse to now work while I'm at the gym. And so I'd like move things around, and luckily we have a great team who's cool with that. Is very flexible, but I refuse to do that, and I'm very happy about it. But yeah, there are days where I have to text, or there's something, someone calls me, or I'm just like not really in the zone. But yeah, I have to cut it off after an hour. That just means I don't get a full workout in, and you know, it is what it is. You don't, you know, you just, tomorrow's a new day, you know. But I got there, got to the gym, I showed up, and I did what I could.
Yeah, that's interesting because for me, I'll finish it and then like maybe it's an hour 15 or an hour 20, and it's like, yeah. Most of the time it's fine because other things I can have that I can move around and stuff. I feel like that would get stressful having everything on the timer. Like in my head, I would be like every 90 seconds, like there's a new thing. Beep, 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 beep. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
I never time stuff. Like I use an alarm in the morning, but after that, I don't really time stuff. Maybe that's another one of my flaws. Things usually take longer than I think that they should. So I'm consistently like 90 seconds late to everything. It's really funny, actually. But
No, I know the feeling. I probably have been, if someone met me, if you talk to someone who knew me back in like college and shortly thereafter, like, yeah, I was late to everything. But since I don't know, since I was like, you know, past 5 years, let's say, yeah, no, my business partners know, a lot of my friends know, like I'm extremely structured and my life is scheduled, and I don't, yeah, I remember I had an ex-girlfriend who was like, there was like I had up on like a whiteboard, I had like what my day, and I had like eat, and this is like on a Saturday, like eat lunch 11:45 to 12:15, you know, and they were like, what the hell is this, you psycho? And that was like the beginning. And I don't schedule time to eat now. I just do it. You know, I don't schedule time. You don't schedule time to go to the bathroom. But that was the makings of like what it is now. And what it is now, I'm like staring at my schedule. It's just very like, yeah, I schedule. I have to. There's no way around it. There's no way around it.
do you do it week by week or
I
month by month? Or
I mean, as soon as I know something's happening, it's a habit. I run to my phone, put it in, and that's it. You know,
do you
and
use your calendar app on your phone, or use like Google Calendars, or
all the above, yeah. So, and I was talking to someone about this the other day. Like, someone wanted it all integrated, and that would be nice. But Google Calendar is good for, like, so my IonQ email is on Google, which is great now. So my work email is no longer Microsoft BS. That's like government computer that I can't integrate. It's all Google, and so it's on my work computer. And then I have my personal calendar and which is all of my business as well, is all on Google. And so I can integrate, and you can look it on your phone on Google Calendar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have all of it selected and see it all. But yeah, my personal stuff, like stuff that is like fun stuff, I probably should go to my like Gmail account and put it in. But for some reason, out of habit, because I still have a lot of things on there, I have it on my personal calendar. And like, I'm sorry, like Apple Calendar on my phone. So for some reason, I still use that too for like Arsenal games. Like, I like to watch Arsenal on the weekends, and so I need to know like what time they're playing, so I don't schedule a meeting during it, because I'm not gonna meet with you when Arsenal's playing. So like, I have to go check that. So I'll always be like, all right, let me check this. So basically, I check two calendars. I check Google Calendar, and I check Apple Calendar, and then
Gotcha. The reason I ask is because I write everything I want to do down like in a agenda type, but I don't time block it off that way. How I do it is like I need to get like these 4 things done for sure, and then these are all the other things that I should do today, and I don't time block it because sometimes like with my job, like I can't my scheduling meetings is often not when it's like when other people are available due to like hierarchies and people are who are in charge of things. Um, and so I have to. Someone's like, "Oh, can you meet with so and so at this time tomorrow?" And I could look at my calendar. I can't be like, "No, I was gonna do laundry." Like,
Yeah.
so you gotta
Yeah.
move things around, and like maintaining a calendar in my head is like almost like it clearly works for what you're doing, but in my head sometimes I feel like if I was in your position, I would do exactly what you're doing. But I feel like in mine, maintaining a calendar and updating every little thing that changes is like almost more hassle than it's worth.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely need to get better at that. That's interesting for sure. We should talk later about this because otherwise the whole podcast is going to be how do you schedule stuff
Yeah.
on a
And I'm
Google
sure
Calendar.
people want to listen to that. Yeah. Hopefully
I
one day I
I
won't
think
have.
some people do though. Some people would because they like scheduling is such a habit to get into, especially or like I started doing it like a year ago maybe, and I think everything in my life probably improved by like 10, 15, 20%, something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm more on top of my life than I was before, so that's always good.
It's
But
been a big difference maker for me too. And I love listening to like really successful people talk about how they schedule their days and their time and how, like they write down what, 3 or 4 big things that you mentioned they got to do that day. Like here, I must accomplish these things. And it's not like they schedule. I schedule focus time. Like I'm doing hard work here. Whatever that is that I'm doing in there, like that's when I then pull out the what must I do today list. But I give myself blocked off 2 hours of like you sit down and you do hard like work. And it used to be writing papers when I was at Dahlgren. But now it's whatever. I just finished a memo, like things like that. Like I have to write stuff or read stuff. That's where that goes is in this block. And so it's kind of an open-ended thing. I don't schedule like you read for 30 minutes, write a thing for 30 minutes. Like it's 2 hours of like get these things done. And so I can kind of I get in a flow state and whatever happens, happens.
that makes sense. That's a good way to do it. Also explains why it took us forever to schedule this.
Yeah, yeah. It's
I'm
I'm
just
hoping
messing.
one day when my goal is to get, obviously to retire here very soon. And when I say retire, I mean quit the W-2. And then that's the thing. Because people will tell me like, uh, if you ask me, like, I bet people that are listening would be like, this guy obviously like loves torture and structure and to work nonstop. That's not necessarily true. I like to be very productive and industrious, I would say, but I am not interested in doing this forever. I have to do it. It's out of necessity now because I'm working a full-time job and uh, co-running 2 other businesses, and I have to do it because it's a means to an end. I'm only going to be at this like level, this level of pace and like structure and just antisocialness for another 3 years max, and then I'm going to relax and calm down a little bit, and I'll leave more room for spontaneity and organic conversations at the gym, things like that. So
Yeah, that's super interesting you mentioned that because I was listening to Patrick Bet David. Have you heard of
yeah,
him? So he's like some super big insurance guy, runs a thing called Valuetainment, and he was saying like the ways to get to retirement or like doing what you want to do fast or like you grind like crazy for like 5 years, you tone it down like in that model, you don't really have room for like socialness, like relationships, etc. Then you get there faster. Then there's like the middle one where you go like 10, 15 years at like a such and such pace, but then like you might have more room for like relationships. Instead of being like the founder of the startup, you're like the third guy or like
yeah,
something like that. And then the other people are like the ones that'll be fine, like work it, they like their consistent job and they have their family and they live and that's how they want to live, and it takes them 30, 40 years, however long it takes, like if they've invested wisely and things like that. So it's interesting that you say that. You're like, nope, 3 years, like because you've been doing it for what, two and a half, three at this
uh,
point.
yes, yeah. We started real estate 3.5 years ago, but we then switched once COVID happened. We immediately pivoted to doing like COVID spraying because there's a lot of money to be made in there and very little like you had to know very little about cleaning and COVID spraying to get the jobs and do it. So we jumped
Oh,
on it.
so
We made a lot of money in like a short amount of time. And then we were like, let's invest this in real estate was the plan. But then we decided to invest it in starting up an actual like janitorial commercial cleaning company. And that's what we run now today. And so then we focused on that for a year and got that like to a steady state. And it's like gradually growing. And then we pivoted back and we got something like an operator to run the stuff the day to day. So we could then pivot back to real estate while that's like slowly building up. And so we've been focusing hardcore on real estate for the past year and a half or so, I would say. And it's doing really well. It's doing really well. It's exciting. There's a lot to learn. There's always so much opportunity and stuff to learn. And it's frustrating having a full-time job because you see, like, if I didn't, I feel like if I didn't have a full-time job for the past year and a half and I was just doing real estate, we would definitely be making enough money to sustain ourselves, our quality of life. That's the goal, is to have enough passive income or generate enough income monthly, regularly, reoccurring, and sustainably to live off of. And that once you hit that threshold, then you can quit your W-2 and move on. If I'd been focusing just on real estate for the past year and a half, would have already accomplished it. But because you're only putting in 10 to 20 hours a week on top of your job, it takes longer. And yeah.
That's the crappy part about coaching, is like it's not really sustained, like it's not growable in that way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, like the training business is like, so I only have a certain amount of time. Like I've got my W-2 job, and then I've got a team that I coach, and then I've got like some individual clients that I train, and then obviously I've got wifey and the dog and everything else. And so like I run out of time, and the podcast as well. I have run out of time to like, okay, how many shorts can I actually and reels can I actually create like in a day? Like, okay, so I'm paying somebody to do that, and that's going pretty well. Okay, now I have to go like to make training videos for the YouTube channel. Like, is the YouTube channel actually growing at what pace? Or like, because then you see people, there's all these like dilemmas. Like, if you work really hard at one thing, like the payoff is not going to come right away, but then you got to know like when to cut and run. And so sometimes, I don't know, I like doing it. And so it sucks that it's not just like, man, people ask me like, if you could do whatever you want, I was like, I would just coach all day and play like all day.
Yeah.
And then, but then there's the other side of that. Like, if you want to really coach a professional team, then there's a limited number of teams to do that. And the A pro license costs like 20 grand. And it's like
Really?
yeah. And you have to, most of the time the clubs will pay for it, but like you have to like hold the D license for 2 years, and then you can go to your C license, and then you have to hold that for another 2 years before you can even get into the class for the B1, and then the B1 is like 8 grand or whatever the numbers are. Somebody who's going to be like, it's not actually 20, it's actually 15. It's like, okay, the point is it's freaking expensive. But like, yeah, so it sucks, but that's cool, man. I could tell that you're very happy with what you're doing by the way you talk about it, which is cool. I've said that to a few people that come on. Like, you can tell that they're very proud of what they're doing. Who's the other guy? Guy named Peter Barber. You guys are not at all in the same space. He's an opera singer and also does YouTube stuff and like covers and stuff. And he released the cover of Enemies by Imagine Dragons. He put I think 15 or 20 grand into the like production side of the video. Comes out, it's like, I talked to him, probably the podcast released like around the same time that he released that. He was so proud of it. Bonkers. Dude is crazy. His voice is so deep, it's insane.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Perfect for what he does.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. But yeah, I noticed that the people I talk to, you might have noticed this also, coming straight out of college, the people that you're with, and then like when you start to like leave those circles a little bit, and then you start to talk to people who are like want to do something, that everyone you talk to is like, you can boil it all down to like, okay, good time management, driven, like savvy in some sort of thing that they've like decided or picked that that's what they want to do. And then just like some of them are more lucrative than others, but everybody's got the same like way of doing things a little bit. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think one thing that really like what when I wasn't as happy as I am now, I noticed like the probably the biggest difference was that I wasn't bought into my vision, wasn't bought into like where I was going, or I didn't have a clear vision. And those things have changed, right? I mean, I went from following like the quantum physics path and getting it, working towards a PhD, which, I mean, I ended up dropping out of the PhD program after I got my master's because my vision for who I wanted to be in my future totally changed once I like met entrepreneurship, right? But I was extremely happy when I was going through the PhD program, like early on. But then once I got introduced to like met my business partners, or well, talked to my business, we've been friends since high school, but we decided to start something up. And I got a taste for that. And then I started to see, like, learn more about the people in that field and see what kind of lives they had. I'm like, wait a minute. What do I, so like I started to reevaluate. So like during the time when I was reevaluating, I wasn't really sure that I was like happy with the path I was on and what I wanted to do. That's when I wasn't at my best. I wasn't happy with because I just wasn't sure. But then once I cleared all that up and made a vision for myself, and like, so like I'm going to get a remote job because I want to structure my life a little bit better. Like I wanted to move. I want to spend, like, right now I'm closing on a duplex down in Virginia Beach because I want to spend my summers spearfishing down there. And my goal was to be able to do that. And so I needed to work remotely or find a new job down there or retire by then. And so I wasn't clear how I was doing that, but okay, got the remote job, still on track to like retire early. And so both those things are in place. Now I just need to get a place down there. So I found a duplex. I'm going to rent out like the bottom and just live at the top during the summers, and then rent out both sides during the winter. But so my plan is like go down there, hang out there all summer so I can spearfish and like chase the, world record sheepshead. And that's like my vision for like everything's kind of like falling into place for it. And so it feels good because a lot of time, energy, man, I made this call that I was like going to move down there during the summers and get a new place and get a remote job and all this. I made this call like almost exactly a year ago. I can go back and look at like my notes and journals and shit. And when we started talking to, like, we have a business coach, and we would meet with him one-on-one. And when I started like, clearing that up and talking to him about it, and we talked through like, well, what are the steps to do that? And so we laid it out, and just started putting action into, putting ideas into action, and saying, this is the vision I want. This is how I see myself for the next 5-10 years. And what do I need? What are the nearest term steps, and what do I got to do to get there? And, it all like really came together towards the end of last year. And yeah, it's been great. So that not because good things are happening to me that I'm like happy. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that like I have a vision that I believe in for myself and my life, and I'm doing everything that I need to do to get there. And I'm doing all of those things every single day. And I'm very disciplined about it because I know where I want to go, and I know what kind of life I want. And I'm carrying out those actions that are consistent with the vision I have for myself. It doesn't matter what that vision is. It could be anything. Like it could be anything. If it was like, I used to like to bass fish a lot, and I wanted to like be like well known in the field and catch big like 10-pound bass. And like if that was my vision and I was doing those things I would just be just as happy. Like that's it. So it has nothing to do with like money or anything. It's just, am I living the life that I want to live? Am I doing everything I need to do to, if I'm not there today, am I taking the steps every day to get there? I think that's the answer.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree. Sooner or later, people are going to pay you to come on these things. I'll take the early freebies,
That'd be nice.
So appreciate it. So last time we talked, actually, we talked lots about quantum physics, and you're like, no, if we're gonna talk again, we should talk about spearfishing.
Yeah.
You just got back from Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you end up wanting to even try it? Like I've gone under, I don't know. I've never scubaed, but I've done like the snuba thing, and my mask got all filled with water, and the air hose was doing like weird stuff, and I was like, never again. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. How did you find it? Like, was it something you just saw on TV one day and you're like, I want to try that? Or like, I feel like nobody gets up and is like, you know what? I really want to go spearfishing today.
You say that about like any obscure thing though, like it's all about what.
Well, yeah.
We get into things that like our parents introduce us to for the most part, right? Or where like I didn't grow up in Southern California, so I've never surfed before, right? So it's just like things like that, or snowboarding in the mountains. Like it would be totally cool. But so for me, my parents like to be around the water and like to fish. And maybe when I was around like 12 or 13, I would guess, I mean, maybe 14, they got a place out on the eastern shore of Virginia, so like Cape Charles area, and they started really getting into like saltwater fishing. And so we started spending our time down there, and I fell in love with the ocean there and fishing and doing all, I really, really enjoyed just hook and line fishing. And until my mom got my dad a spear gun for Christmas one year, I think it was. And because we saw out at the tower, Chesapeake Light Towers, where you'd go out all the way offshore and you go fishing, and there's tons of boats around, but it's like this big, like old weather tower, and or light tower, they would say. And then around it, people were spade fishing. You could see these fish, there's a certain type of fish. You could see them like up on the surface or from the surface. You could see them, big schools of them, right? And every once in a while we see some people like spear fishing in the tower and shooting these fish. And so my dad wanted to try it. So my mom bought him this gun, and I think when we got there, my dad like gave it to me and said, "All right, you hop in." So, and I was wearing like this old wetsuit that barely fit me, that I think they used as like a wetsuit for like kayaking, like one that surfers would use, which is totally different from like one that spear fishermen would use. And so I jumped in and shot I couldn't see shit. I mean, it was like super murky. I was scared shitless. For the longest time, I was still scared of like sharks in the water, especially murky water, way offshore. You're a kid. You don't have a whole lot of experience with it. You don't know anyone that's done it. So you don't have anyone to tell you that it's not a big deal. And, so just jumping in the ocean is just sketchy. And
Jaws is coming to get you, bro.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like for the longest time, and even probably sometimes still occasionally, probably not, that all those feelings probably went away like 5 years ago, but it is really sketchy hopping in the water for the first time like that, especially in murky water. And sucked it up, went as close I could to the tower, finally saw the school. It kind of popped up, and you're like, oh shit, and then popped one and came back to the boat quickly. And I was hooked after that. It was I grew up in the Eastern Shore, like jumping in the water and spearfishing. My dad and started to get more into it. We went with this other guy, and I did it for the longest time when I was a kid. But then, like around the time I went to college, I think my dad kind of stopped going a little bit to the Eastern Shore. My whole family did, and so we just spearfished less, and they were using tanks too. And I was like mostly freediving, but we kind of stopped going a little bit, and I fell out, and then going to college, and so didn't have a whole lot of time to go and stuff, and got into other things, and but still always have a love for it. But then, like once I got out of college, I was like, I really want to do this again. Like, I don't know why we stopped doing this. I really want to do this. But we weren't going to the Eastern Shore as much. I didn't have as many opportunities. So I talked to this guy who is local named Dano. He now lives in Virginia Beach, but he owns Mako Spearfishing. They're like a famous, I don't have any Mako stuff or anything, but they're like a famous, one of the world's best selling like spearfishing brands. One of the top ones in the world, and it just happens to be the guy that made it happens to be based out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Really, really strange. King George, actually. And he, yes, I like met him, and we talked, and he kind of knew my family. My dad's close with him. We close for a little while. And so I got to talking to him. I was like, how do I want to go offshore. I want to shoot big fish. Like, I want to get into it. Who do I need to talk to? And he connected with some people down in North Carolina, and I went with them, and then met some people in Virginia Beach. And it's a small community. So you start talking, you start to meet people. And so I met some people down in Virginia Beach, Michael Hosang and Gary Jones, who I'm still, they're like two of my best friends now. And I go all the time, go with them on different trips, go with them. Mike Hosang is the one I go with, like to Costa Rica. We've been to Key West, California, Florida, Key West, North Carolina. We've been all over, and I want to go to Fiji here soon. That would be sweet. But yeah, we go to Costa Rica every year. This year we've got bluefin tuna in San Diego, or like SoCal, like Orange, LA area, and then we talked about going to the Gulf of Mexico, Baja California area, for big broomtail grouper and cubera, and then cubera snapper, and these like just giant like saltwater, just huge crazy fish. And then at the end of the year we'll do Key West, and then back in February we'll do Costa Rica again. So we kind of hit we hit all over, but It's a blast. I couldn't imagine my life not doing it. Like, this is what I want to spend my time doing for sure, is just traveling around, spearfishing, experiencing different cultures. Because that's the other cool thing too, when you go on these trips, like you're going to new areas, meeting new people. And I mean, it's once you go and you shoot a fish, and then you bring it on board, you go through this whole thing, and then you're sitting down at dinner later and you're eating this fish that you just shot that day. Like, once you have that experience, like that's usually where it snaps for people, and they're just like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. It's really neat.
I've heard that about hunting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's a lot of like regulation and stuff, overfishing and these sorts of things. How do you guys have to deal with any of that, or not really? Because you're getting, well, I guess the fish that you guys are getting are pretty big, so it's just like a one, like it's not like you're going after like these, you're not commercially fishing like. But has that ever been like an issue, or do you have to get like permits and stuff to go, or how
You
does that
do.
work?
It's still managed, and we still have the same recs, rules and regulations, regs, that traditional hook and line fishermen have. We get a lot of spear fishermen catch a lot of flack from line fishermen because they think that we just go down there and shoot everything. And maybe there's certain species where that's the case. Like, you can shoot the crap out of spade fish, but people hook and line them like crazy. The thing is, there's a much smaller percentage of people that are out there, recreational watermen, people that are spearfishing and fishing. Spearfishermen are a very small percentage of that. So even if they were just somehow more productive than hook and line, they're a lesser part of the population. So they'd have to be significantly more productive than hook and line people. But two, it's not that easy. Okay. And it's, we can be more selective is the other thing. It's the only type of fishing where you can choose which fish you catch. You know what I mean? So you can pick and choose the size. Like, a lot of times when people are hook and line fishing, you can't, obviously, and you can foul hook fish that you didn't intend to hook. You can hook bigger fish or smaller fish than you'd like to and wear them out, and oftentimes, not often, but sometimes kill them unintentionally, even if you're trying to. Or people hold them up above water for too long and they suffocate and they end up floating, like later they can't go back down. Now, these are rare occurrences, but it happens. But with spearfishing, you can choose, like, you see a fish and you can decide whether or not you want to harvest that fish. Now, there are people who especially if you're newer, who can't tell size that well, and so they'll shoot an undersized fish or an oversized, whatever the case may be, and that happens. But that's lack of experience, and it's much more rare, I've seen, than like foul hooking or killing a fish unintentionally from hook and line. So it's a selective thing. And when it comes to certain species like bluefin tuna, for example, it is much easier to hook and line them than it is to spear them. So this is a strange thing I'll tell you about the East
Are those
Coast.
the super big tuna?
Yeah. Maybe we'll put a picture of one in the thumbnail or something that I have with one. That's a big giant tuna on the West Coast out in California. Big schools of like 200, 300-pound bluefin coming through. You can watch videos all day long on Instagram or YouTube of people hook and lining them left and right. Spearfishing is like, we've gone several times. I couldn't even get close. Like, it's very difficult. Like, it took time. Now, there's certainly people that can go and accidental, like, that have never even jumped in the water before and shoot a bluefin tuna. You hear those stories, but it's much less common than people who've been spearfishing for several years, and they go to California and it's a totally different ball game. They have to adapt and learn, and they blank. I mean, we blanked our first 2 trips. So. And it was like 3 days of spearfishing, just blanked. And these are people, hosting and I, who go all the time. So it's not easy at all. So people just think you're down there, you have some magical power. The fish swims right up to you and you just blast them and you're just left and right and pull. One, you still have the same regs. You can't take any more fish than what a hook and line person could take. So that's a nonsense argument. And two, again, it's just more difficult. And on the East Coast, for some reason, you're not allowed to shoot bluefin tuna. The bluefin tuna here get much bigger than they do in the West Coast. You're talking 600, 7-pound fish versus like average of like 200 pounds on the West Coast. And the people that would have the gear, the knowledge, and the skills to take down an East Coast, 700-pound East Coast bluefin tuna, there's so few. I mean, I would know anyone in Virginia that would be able to do that. I mean, it's just like the gear you'd have to have, the skills you'd have to have. There's only a literally, and I'm not exaggerating, say a handful of people in Virginia that would have the ability to do it.
Are you one of them?
Maybe at this point, or maybe after one more summer in California, I can claim. But no, I guarantee I'm probably not. I guarantee you that if Hosting and I went out there and tried to do it, it would take several tries of like going after them before you could actually land one. There'd be a huge learning curve. There's a lot more sharks. The gear is just, they would tear your gear up. We'd have to like come up with some creative ways to slow them down and them not break our stuff. But it's finding them and getting in position, like that would take challenge, because I guarantee it's a totally different game than California. But the thing is, you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to spearfish them. People hook and line them all the time on the East Coast, no big deal. But you cannot spear them. It's so crazy. Like, what makes you think? I mean, I don't even think common sense. Someone that doesn't even know about spearfishing, I don't see how you could imagine that shooting one of those is easier than hook and lining them. I don't get it. It makes no sense. But here we are. It's illegal to shoot them. So eventually,
I don't remember what I asked you, but I sense that you feel very strongly about this issue.
I think like regulations around spearfishing or something. Dude, I'm telling you right now, in the next, keep an eye, talk to me again in 2 years, because I guarantee you, we're pushing to get this out of the way, especially Jose. He's like, there's been so many meetings down there about like different regs and stuff. And this is one of the topics that we're trying to change. If we can get to where we're spearfishing bluefin tuna on the East Coast, it's going to be one of the hottest topics and one of the hottest things that's going on in the spearfishing community for years. I mean, it'll be wild, because these fish are massive, and it's never been done, or not been done, in anybody's lifetime. And it'll be a very it'll break the internet for sure. It'll be cool.
So I'm trying to. Okay, so walk me through a day out in California trying to get a 300-pound fish. Like, how far out? Like, how deep's the water? How far out are you going? What equipment? Like, how close do you have to get to shoot it? It's like, what if you shoot it and you wound it, or like and it tries to swim away? Like, then how do you get 300 pounds into the boat? Like, picking up 300 pounds is hard enough on land. You have to do it in the water. Like,
it's there's a lot to it, and luckily, like, people have been doing it for a little while now, so we know the gear. Actually, in fact, so like bluefin tuna on the Southern California coast, like they disappeared for a little while, and then they came back in recent years, and so people have been going after it. And it's a small community, and you can meet you can name everyone that's doing it out there. It's an even smaller community of spear fishermen in Virginia. There's like a small group, and you can see all who's going. So it's funny. The spearfishing community is very well known, very small. But anyway, so these people have been doing it for a long time. So you go out with people who know, and they set you up. And what's going on is like you're using like the biggest possible guns with like 5 to 7 bands on them. And so actually I pulled this out to show you. So this is a gun that you could do it with, and I did shoot a tuna with this past year, but for bigger ones, they like recommend you use bigger stuff. But this is the size of the, I don't know if you can even see what's going on. This is the size of the gun. And you wouldn't have a reel for bluefin tuna. This is so you shoot. I mean, I need to start from scratch because not everyone knows what's going on here. But so you have a gun. It's wooden. It's heavy. It holds the recoil. It also floats when there's no spear in it. But then there's a spear in here that's in the top that you can kind of see. It's got these tabs on it here, and here. Okay, I got the sun blocking on, but anyways.
No, you're good. I can see it.
So then you have the spear that sits in the top, and it goes out, and you have line that comes up and down the gun. So these are several wraps, because once you release the shaft flies out, and you have line coming back that you need. First of all, you need line that's free so that it's not like dragging in the water, because you need it like several wraps here free. You're shooting like 15 feet away. Usually the spear can go 25 feet, but if you're shooting through a thick, like 300-pound fish, you don't want to be shooting at the end of your shooting ability. You want to be shooting like 10, 15 feet away so that it can puncture it. All right. And now let's get to the business end of things here. So This is the tip of the gun, the muzzle, and it's got several bands. So this is only 3. So this is going for like smaller fish or wahoo or something like that. But yeah, for tuna, I had at least 4 bands on here, and you want to have over there. They don't even like me to use this gun. Like they're like, no, you need something bigger and more powerful, like 5 bands or something like that, which makes sense. But you just got to get a little bit closer with this setup. But anyway, so you have what's going on here is you have a slip tip. So this tip right here, you see it's pointed.
Yeah.
Like this little toggle here. It sits on the top like this. Okay. And so once this passes through a fish, this will fall off. And now you have this toggles in the backside of the fish. So this is now toggled here like this, and it's pulling it so that it can't rip out or anything like this. And it just sits and toggles, and the rest it's connected to the rest of the spear back here. So that now you've got this sitting in the fish in theory like this. And you're sitting dangling. And now
it never rips out. Does this fish skin like not let it? Because I can picture like in other animals, like if you,
it's through the entire body, right? So it's got to rip back through all of it. It would never. No, it doesn't do that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it connects. So then that's toggled on, like, you shoot through the fish. It goes through and it toggles on the back side. So now line is passing through like the torso, the side of the body of the fish, which I like a demonstration here. And so now the fish, usually the tuna, like take off. And I think I have a video on my Instagram that's like, you see the line is connected to a float line or a line that floats, usually like, usually it's a bungee. And so like 100-foot bungee, or you can have like a 75-foot float line with like a 25-foot bungee. But the bungee also floats, and the bungee is a really interesting thing because if it's just a regular float line, these fish are like run fast and aggressive and powerful. So if it's with a line with no stretch, there's going to be so much pressure on that shaft and on that slip tip and everything that, like, what's going to happen is the shaft isn't going to rip through, like the toggle isn't going to rip through the fish's body. Line's going to start to break. Knots are going to start to pull. And so you want, just like when you're fishing, you want to give some drag. You want there to be some drag and some give so that you're not overly stressing your gear and forcing a break. You want there to be some fight and some give and wear the fish down. So the bungee, like a 100-foot bungee, is going to wear a tuna down. There's a 200-pound tuna. But they can take this down. So they got this giant float on the surface, and I don't have one here, but they got this giant float on the surface that's like 2 atmospheres of pressure, 3 atmospheres of pressure, and it's connected to this bungee, and they take it down. And so they're pulling all this stretch in this bungee, and then now this float. I mean, if you've been in a pool and tried to sink like one of those big blow up balls, like you can't do it, right? It just doesn't happen. And that's like just with air pressure. We're talking like high pressured floats that they're able to sink down along with the bungee and sink down like out of sight, 100+ feet down. You can't see, and it totally disappears and it wears them down. And so eventually you wait, and this buoy pops back up. You get in the boat, like we get in the boat, you look around, and finally it pops back up like 5 minutes later. And then you go over, you get into the water, you get to the buoy, and you pull. It's a bungee, and so you're like slowly pulling, and there's like I'm not sure what you call it, but like a ratchet, basically ratchet system where there's like a gripper, and the bungee passes through this gripper. And so you pull. So as you pull, the bungee's diameter shrinks. And so as you pull, it can slide through. And then once you stop pulling, like it expands again, and it grips. And so then you pull and pull and pull. And so you do this until you keep like ratcheting up more and more bungee until the fish gets to like the length of your shooting line, which is usually like 25 feet. But a lot of times the fish is even deeper than that because you can only pull up to so much, because they don't like being close to the surface. They see you and they dip more, and then you're risking your gear breaking. So as soon as it gets to within like 30-35 feet, you're supposed to, you or your dive buddy, dive down with another loaded gun and try to aim for a kill shot, which is like in a certain part of the head of the fish, which everyone that spearfishes knows, general idea of where it's at. You try to aim for that somewhere in the head, and usually that kills them and just finishes them off. And then you're able to bring them up calmly and finish the job. So, and that's when you bleed them and all that. But I didn't really
shoot the first one. Like, is the spear is detached from your gun at that point? Like, it's not
connected to the buoy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was
you can
gonna
relay
say
it
if
down.
it takes off, it's gonna like pull your shoulder out of the socket or something.
Yeah, no, you don't want to be connected to these fish. No,
No,
the
yeah, it
gun,
seems
yeah,
seems like a very poor idea.
yeah. The line like breaks free here,
Oh,
connected.
gotcha.
So this is tied to my reel, and that's why it's colored here. But if it weren't, it'd be like a small bungee clip here that connects to this little trigger mechanism. And then once you shoot, this releases all the line, and this, which is connected to your spear, goes to a float line that's on the surface, and so it all releases, and you're free from everything.
Gotcha. I know in California, well, that's not true. We're in like San Francisco Bay Area, but have you ever had problems like the tuna comes back up and there's like blood and sharks come try and get the fish?
Yeah, there's not as many fish in California for some reason, or sharks in Southern California for some reason. The sharks they do have are huge, but in like the Los Angeles, San Diego area, we've seen Mako or the guy that we went with last time, like the week before or a couple days before we got there, like there was some big Makos swimming around the boat, Mako shark, and we've seen one before, but they're not off. I mean, like that was the only shark we've seen going there like 3 separate times. And then you hear about big great whites too. That was the other concern. So like, what sharks you do get are bad. It's kind of like Costa Rica. We saw like a 10-foot bull shark or something like that they said, or maybe the tiger. I didn't see it. I was out of the water, but my partners had seen it. And you don't see many sharks, but the ones you do are just giant like man eaters. But the great whites, yeah, are the ones that you got to be worried about in Southern California. I don't know. People say like, oh, you're never going to get attacked by a great white out here, but like it can be murky out there. And I don't trust that at all. With the biggest shark, the most sharks and the biggest sharks I have seen though are on the East Coast. And like I shot like what would have been like a hook and line state record amberjack in Wilmington or Topsail, North Carolina 2 years ago. And or maybe it was a year ago. I think it was 2 years ago. But anyways, right before, like 15 minutes before I shot that fish, there was a 13.5-foot great white swimming around the boat. And we went and looked at it, like, OSearch, like where you can like look up the app and see the great whites like traveling up and down the coast. Like, yeah, so there's the app. So we went and looked at it, and it was like I could tell you the name of the shark we saw earlier that day. So
Oh my God.
just don't worry about it. You just gotta not think about it.
No, yeah, just don't think about it and jump in with them. Yeah, no
It
worries.
sounds so ridiculous saying it out loud, but like that is the trick. It's just like you care more about shooting fish than you do about getting eaten. And after you spend more time in the water, you're it's kind of like that it'll never happen to me thing, right? Like when you're texting and driving, like at first you're like, this is sketchy, and then once you do it more, you're like, I'm never gonna get in an accident. Like I'm so so it's a bad analogy and
That's a horrible analogy. We don't condone that. Don't do that.
I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm saying that can like that is still the natural human reaction is like
I'm trying to save you, dude. I'm making sure everybody knows that
I
you
don't
don't do that.
drive.
No,
I was
of
talking
course
about
not.
you. I was talking about you. I
That's
don't.
rude. That's
I would-
rude.
Uh,
That's rude. You're on my show.
Mom, if you're listening, I'm just kidding. It's just an analogy.
So if you have to get within like 15 feet of these giant fish, like how do you actually do that before they swim away, or are they so big that they don't care about you?
I totally skipped like how you even. I just was like, here's how you shoot them.
No, that's fine. That's why we're here to ask questions.
So when I first went to California, like our very first trip, I think I posted a picture like in the airport on the way home, and I was just like blistered up. Like my face was crinkly and cracky and red and like dried out, like everything about like because you're basically it's the only spearfishing where you spend most of the day in the boat. Like in Costa Rica, you spend most of the day in the water. You're soaking all day long. In Key West, you're soaking all day long. You're in the water all day long. Like wahoo hunting, you're just floating. Like your neck becomes so sore because you're on the surface just like looking for wahoo all the time. So you're like this all day long, just like this, and your neck is wrecked by the end of the trip. And you're soaking for 6, 7, 8 hours. It's ridiculous. But tuna fishing in in California, you're in the boat. This is the way it went down. you're in the boat, like hosting. I remember the first year, well, I'll describe this because hosting is like on the surface. He's got like eagle eye. This dude like can spot a freaking fish from his living room if you can't even see the ocean. Like he knows. He can feel them. And so he's up top, he's looking at, I'm in the back of the boat. You're literally just sitting in the back, fully geared up. You've got your hood usually off because it's suffocating if it's on, and you're up and it's hot, but the cold water's cold, so you're wearing like a thick suit. So it's miserable. You're on the surface. You're wearing this suit that's like 5 mils thick, and so as you look around, your like neck gets all freaking red. You're sitting here like this. You've got your snorkel and mask like in a bucket of water sitting down here ready to go, so that when you get yelled at, it's time to like put it on and go. But you're sitting here ready. You're trying to when you're free diving, like you need to breathe up. With this, so typically like in the water, you get in the water, you relax. Okay, guys, we're gonna get in here and there's gonna be a reef down there, and you swim down, you look for some fish and you shoot them. Like, no, this is like high intensity, like SEAL training. And what's funny is our very first guide, our very first like spearfishing guide out there in California that we went with, he was a Navy SEAL instructor. So this whole like run and gun Navy SEAL type environment is just amplified by this guide who very much treats it that way. And now I like it, and it's sad, but it's like afterwards, like you got your ass kicked, because I mean, this is what you're like. You're sitting in the back of the boat. But first of all, yeah, you get there early, and then you drive all the way out there, and you spend, you drive for an hour and a half, 2 hours to get offshore to the zone where all the schools are, and it could be way offshore, it could be closer in, but it's where they spotted schools of tuna swimming around before. So what you're looking for are birds crashing or tuna chilling. So there's really only 2 types of schools. So you've got all schools of tuna. They're all big and whatever. Some are small, some are big, but there's 2 types that they say. There's breezers and there's foamers. Breezers are like the tuna are on the surface, and they're just chilling. They're just cruising. They're not really actively feeding. They're just cruising. And you can see, especially if it's really calm out there, you can see the wake that they're making. You can see their backs breaking the water. And so you got to like spot, you look out over the water and you got to spot this difference, this cloudy structure and like more turbulent water. And then you get up closer and you see, okay, this is a school of breezers, and you see where they're headed, and you try to like get out in front of them and sneak into the water and get in ahead of them, and then like quietly swim over to them ahead. Like if they're headed this way, you want to quietly like cut them off and swim, and then get ready to dive. Then you like dive down. The school on the surface, it's like an iceberg, but yeah, it's like an iceberg. I was going to say, but like reverse, but no, it's an iceberg where, you see like the school on the surface of like fish pushing water, but underneath like is a big tornado of fish. And so, you don't want to wait till you get to the tip of the iceberg and swim down, because the other ones will have scattered by then. So you want to get close and then dive down into the iceberg. Because again, it's like, it extends way out. So dive down deep into the iceberg and like meet them at like 40, 60 feet and try to relax and get them to swim around and take a shot. But before I explain the shot, so the other type of school, which is what all we had for like this first trip, is like foamers. Foamers are a school of tuna that are just blasting fish, just blasting bait fish. They're actively feeding. And you look, and like there's so much white water and shit everywhere that it's like, that's what they say is like it's like white foamy water, and so they call them foamers. And they're just like tuna freaking just blowing out of the water. And this is very intense. So you spot them and you gun. So like you're running, you're constantly cruising. That's why like I'm sitting in the back, breathing up, trying to relax, trying to bring my heart rate down. And we run and gun. We spot, and you could be sitting in the back for an hour, 2 hours. You could just be sitting there, just getting blasted by the sun, just like breathing, and fucking your neck's rubbing raw. And then all of a sudden, get ready. And like the boat like guns it, and they don't even need to say anything. As soon as the boat guns it, like, you're like, all right, time to go. And then you start to relax a little bit more. And you turn around and say, yeah, but you're gonna be ready. Are you ready? You ready? We see it up here. Like, you're like, I'm like, I'm not fucking going anywhere. Like, I'm right here. Like, so you get your mask on, and then all of a sudden, like you can close your eyes to this whole thing, because it's just all off a feel, and they're telling you exactly what to do. So it's easier to calm down and slow your heart rate if your eyes are closed. So I usually just close my eyes and chill. And then he's like, all right, get ready. And then you feel the boat slow down. Like, okay, here we go. I grab the gun on my right, move it over to my left. And then, they slowed down. He's like, all right, go. And then you pick up, you drop in the water, and you swim. So typically when you're free diving, to get your best dive, you sit on the surface, you calm down, you take a bunch of breath, you do a slow breathe up for like, 30 seconds, and then you calm down, and then you take a nice deep dive. This isn't anything like that. This is like the school's moving fast. You need to also move fast, and you can't really see the school. So you're swimming and you're looking back at the boat, and you're trying to get direction from the boat, and they're like directing you where to go. And then they also tell you when to dive. So you're like looking back, and also you got to dive on like a school of 200-pound tuna and have a chance, of a lifetime after spending thousands of dollars to train and do this and come out and freaking, you may only get one opportunity. So you're supposed to be your calm as possible in this moment. That's like the pinnacle of like, you must like do or die. And you got the people on the boat screaming at you, dive, dive, dive. So then you turn over, you take one deep breath, and then you go down and you swim down, and you typically can't see the fish as when you first dive. So you're just trusting they're going to be there. You're holding, you're chilling, and you get down to like, it's that 40, 60 feet, and then tuna are blowing by you. And so I remember the first trip, like it was so murky too, that you couldn't see fish until they were like 20 feet in front of you, and they're blowing by already. And I've got this giant gun, and it was like twice the size of this. And it's this big giant log underwater, and fish are blowing by. And so I'm like, okay, I see fish. So as they're blowing by, I'm like trying to turn the gun to like get in position and put a shot on them. And man, I have video of this that like, maybe I'll post it in the future when like I've proven myself and like I'm actually like a talented like spear fisherman. But like I look like such a freaking rookie. I mean, I'm like all turned sideways and like backwards. You can see my fin like float up. Like, oh my God, I look terrible. And I just totally just whiffed all those opportunities. And not all, I mean, I had 3 opportunities, but whiffed each one, and fishers blown by me. But then like, yeah, the second year, I'm like more relaxed, and I know fish are blowing by me. That's fine. Don't worry about those. Get lined up, because more fish are coming into view. You just can't see them yet. So get lined up and get ready, and expect more fish to come into view in front of you rather than trying to shoot fish that are blowing by you. Get ready for ones that are going to appear, and get set up to take your shot. And if you don't get those, calm down, pull the gun in, and like swivel and look around, because a lot of times they'll circle back around you, and then get prepared and lead these fish. And these fish too, so then once you get time for the shot, they're moving so quick that like, if this is my hand is the fish, like this is the point of the nose, like this is where you want to aim, because they're moving so fast. By the time that spear gets there, you want to be somewhere around here mid body. So you need to aim like up here, like close to the and so you got to try to get that shot right, and you got to be close enough, and it's just all these things. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because you train for, I do a lot of like dry training. I mean, I'm not around the water, so I don't get time to spearfish year round. But changing this year, luckily. But so most of the time I don't get to get in the water, but like a handful of times a year. So you have to, in order to be like able to pull off those dives and do everything that like I want to be able to do, that to allow my body to be able to do it too, I have to be training year round. Like I that's how I treat it anyways. And I notice a big difference. When I say training, I'm talking about like, going to the gym, staying physically active, but doing stretching, doing breath hold trainings, doing specific trainings for freediving. And so you spend all this time year round, like disciplined, dedicated, and you spend all this money to go do this, and you're only doing one trip a year, and you don't know if you're ever going to get to go on another trip ever again. Who knows what's going to happen? COVID hits or whatever. So you got to like make it happen. And it's funny because it all comes down to like a couple of seconds. You don't even see the fish till like that, and you have to decide and move quickly and react quickly. And so you spend all this time, all this money to like get a couple second window that you get to like try to make it happen and align things right. And it's so wild, and it's such an adrenaline rush when you shoot that fish and you see him just take off and run, and like your lines running and the buoys digging, and you're just like, I mean, you're freaking out. You lose control. It's so cool.
Dude, that's sick. And then I see you post the meals that are made afterwards. And I was like, makes me want to. It's like the only part. It's like, I'll fly in for the meal, dude. And it's like, you can't get me going to the water. I'm not doing it. Yeah. But it looks. So what is your? So you've got to eat a bunch of different kinds of fish. Then I would assume. So what is your? Do you have one that you like the most, or like a one that you like to hunt the most?
I really like. I really like hunting cubera. They're mean, they're nasty, they're sketchy. There's like this one place we go in Costa Rica where these these cubera, like at this deep, there's this deep spot. So the water is like in California too, like hundreds of feet deep. The water's like hundreds of feet deep, but around this one spot, it's what we call a pinnacle, and the water comes up to like the bottom comes up to like 126 feet or something like that. And so the fish kind of congregate around this section, and the cubera, like they'll go into the holes in the ground. There's rocky like bottom down there, but the fish sit up above it, and so you can dive down to like 40, 60, 70, 80 feet still and be able to shoot these fish because they're up off of it a ways. But they're so skittish, and there's giant schools of these big cubera, but they're so goddamn skittish. I've got some really cool footage from last time that I can't wait to show, because I finally was able to like get down there, get to depth, not scare them, and put a good shot in. Where I am now with like my breath hold ability, my free diving ability, and my hunting ability is like light years ahead of where I was 3 years ago. And I still have like so much to improve on that. Like I'm excited for every new trip now, because it's always something new. I'm always getting better. It's so exciting because I have a lot of room for improvement. Let's just put it that way. So it's great to like see the practice come into play. But this is what these cubera are like, they're down, you have to get down to like 60 feet to shoot them, and at least, right? And they're so skittish, but they're massive and they're cool, and their fight is like crazy. Like I've shot my first cubera on this past trip. This was at a different spot. It's a little bit shallower. It's like 75 feet deep. But I get down, pull the trigger like 55 feet. The bottom's 25 feet away, and there's this big like rock cave that like you shoot these fish. And I lost one last year. I shot one, and he ran into this rock cave and ripped my spear out because he just like, that's what they do. And so I lost a big one last year. And so this past trip, I shot this cubera. It was like the first dive of the trip. Like, I mean, unheard of things, right? Like you dive down. They weren't expecting us. It's your first dive. So typically the first dive is the best dive, because the fish are kind of like, just like not sure what's going on. Like, who the hell is this? And then once people start diving, then they're like, I don't like the looks of this, and they'll disappear, So first dive is like popping the cherry, like getting greens and diving down. And you see this cubera came up to me and gave me an opportunity. I took it. And as soon as I shot, again, mentioned the spear like detaches from the gun. So the gun is free and the line is free, but the fish started to head straight for this rock, this cave. And I was like, fuck, that's not happening. So I grabbed the line, I grabbed the float line, and I'm like yanking on him. I see him, he's headed right to the hole, and he got like to the entrance of the cave. And that's when I like just yanked back on him. He just turned, and then he just started to go. He got yanked back, and they started to go again. I yanked back on him. I mean, it was like this back and forth like 4 times before he finally gave up, and he like turned to try to go somewhere else. And then the guide who was on the surface, he got a hold of the line at that point and was able to pull him up. And yeah, it was wild. They're just mean. Like no other fish does that. They're just like mean, nasty, like aggressive fish. And it's really freaking cool. They've also got these gnarly teeth, so they look like an alligator gar. Or like, they're cool as shit. They're prehistoric looking.
So how big are these to like grab the line? Because you would never do that with a tuna.
No, this fish wasn't like crazy big. I've got pictures of him, but he was like, how big? I mean, I'm going to stand way back. He like, the fact that I can do it with my hands tells you he's not like the tuna. Like the tuna in California, he's bigger than me, right? But the cubera was probably, I don't know, maybe like that long or so. So it's not a huge fish. Maybe it's a little longer. I don't know. I forget how much he weighs. We didn't weigh him, obviously, but still a big fish, a big cubera. But they're just pound for pound some of the strongest fish. Tuna are fast and like aggressive, but honestly, I mean, maybe I prefer tuna. I don't know, but these fish are just mean. Like tuna can't go into a cave and crank out your gear. They can just do hard, aggressive runs and break your line that way. But cubera are like, they'll get down into holes, and you got to like go fish them out, and like, or they'll tear your shit out. I mean, they're just like mean, aggressive fish. They're pretty cool. What I really want to shoot is a dog-tooth tuna. Those apparently are like, that's like the pinnacle of like species you can go after, because they're deeper. I mean, people probably disagree and say, oh no, it's white sea bass or something like that, but they're deeper, they're meaner. I mean, they tear up your gear. I mean, that's what you're looking for, like fish that will tear your gear up. They're mean and aggressive, and they're skittish, and they're usually deep. And that's dogtooth tuna for you all day. I mean, I just saw a post the other day. Someone shot a big one like 20 feet deep, but that's super rare. I mean, they're normally extremely deep and very hard to get a hold of. And so that's what you want, is like things that test you as a free diver and as a spearfisherman, like, so your hunting ability.
You have
And
you have a tank. Do you have? Are you connected to oxygen at all?
no, it's all free dive. It's all breath hold. So yeah,
So when you're down there at like 50 feet, like I remember like when I was little, whatever, somebody got like there's a pool, whatever, goes like 15 feet near the diving board. You get down there and like your ears pop at like 15. Like when you're at 50, 60, 70, like first of all, it takes a long ass time to get down there. Do you have weights? Do you have like a weight belt?
Yeah, you have a weight belt because you want to be like neutrally buoyant at like
Yeah.
30 feet or something like that. What that means is like, where you stabilize in the water. So like on the surface, you're sinking. So you want to be, if you're too buoyant, if you float too much, it takes too much power to get down, and it's just, you look silly, you tire yourself out. It's not good. So you want to be neutrally buoyant at like 30 feet.
If you go down too fast or up too fast with your ear pressure, like I don't know. I remember reading
Yeah.
about that when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
Up is no problem. Down though, you have to clear. I mean, I had this issue when I first started going deeper, where I wasn't clearing frequently enough. So you have to clear like every couple of feet. You have to clear your ears. Otherwise, like air will expand, and because I mean you have air that you're taking with you from the it's compressive, but you want to equalize. So you want to equalize the pressure in your eustachian tubes, which are like your ear canals, and your lungs. So you want to equalize the pressure there. So I think it's the pressure differential from like, I think the outside of your ear versus the inside of your ear, and you need to like equalize those two. Otherwise, you can burst your eardrums. This has happened to people that like black out in the water. So you've heard of shallow water blackout or blackout. It's when you run out of oxygen and your brain shuts down, your body shuts down, and people have sank, down below depth. And every time, right away, your eardrums instantly burst. And which is not a good thing. And yeah, because you have to equalize as you're going down. As you're coming up, it's no big deal. Air just expands and it pushes out. But yeah, going down, you have to equalize.
So how long are you down there at a time for now? Like, because are you just holding your breath, or not holding, but like you're slowly pushing out air? Like,
No, you don't slowly
no?
push out air. No, that's like what you do on scuba. If you hold your breath on scuba, you're supposed to slowly blow out air.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Maybe that's what I'm remembering from.
Yeah. But no, you hold your breath, you're taking a breath, you go down, you come up. Only thing you're doing is equalizing your goggles and equalizing your ears, and that's it.
How long are you down there for?
When I first started, I probably couldn't do over a minute, like 45 seconds. But yeah, I can do a minute and a half, no problem now. I mean, you say no problem. It depends on like if I'm super active, like if you're like the tuna thing, right? Like a minute 15 would be solid because you're running and gunning, you're not relaxing. But if I get a good breathe up, like I think my best I've done is like a minute and 52. But that's like I wasn't even like hunting. It was just like lake diving. But above water, like a static breath hold, like if I'm sitting on my couch practicing, I can do over 5 minutes. I've done 5.5 minutes before, and
Dude, what the hell?
that's really good though. Like
Well, I'm agreeing, but I'm saying it's ridiculous.
no, this is and it's like let me not sound like I'm bragging, because I'm not, because that's really good, and that is, and I compare that to like other free divers, like that's better than just about any free diver I'll talk to. But my breath hold underwater is not nearly as good as a lot of free divers that are really good. Like you take like the upper 10-15% of spear fishermen that can like dive over 100 feet and can hold their breath for over a minute and a half, 2 minutes, to over 2.5 minutes underwater. I mean, I know this guy like Blake on a breath. He's like this. He was an ex-Navy SEAL. He still is. I think he's a Navy SEAL instructor or something. He invited me to come out to Hawaii. I was going to go out this year, but I just got too many trips. But he's like, I'm trying to learn from him. He's doing like 2.5-minute breath holds underwater. He's diving hundreds of feet. Like that's where I want to get to. So that's what I mean by I have a long way to go. But his static breath hold is 5 minutes. I don't think it's much more than that. So that's what's crazy, is like I can do that no problem. But underwater, like I still have a long ways to go. And so it's not.
How do you tell then? Like, I guess the reason I'm asking is because So when I did this like the snuba thing or whatever, we were connected to the boat with a oxygen like tube or whatever. And in my head, I would have been way more comfortable without the tube and just free diving because the water wasn't that deep. But like the tube kept like pulling, like it got caught like when I went in, like my goggles went or whatever.
I would freak out, dude. That's not for me.
Yeah, so I freaked out and I was like, "Fuck this!" And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore." But like free diving, I feel comfortable. But like I always know, I'm like, okay, I'll just pick a random time because I don't count it, like 30 seconds or whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm at like 20. I should probably surface now or whatever, and then I can just go back down and it's fine. Well, when you're down, like I would be down 5 or 10 feet, like looking at the fish and reefs and like those touristy excursions and stuff. But you're down like 60 feet. Like, how long does it take you to get back up there? Like, do you have like a mental timer that you're like, because it's not the same thing every time. So if like one time you're like at 90 seconds and you're like, okay, it's time to go. And then you're like, no, this is going to be my minute 52 second time. Like, how do you know? Like, how do you time that? Or like when you're down there at a minute 46 and you're like, your mental timer's like, okay, time to go, but you're still at 50 feet. Like, how do you do that?
It's all feel. It's all feel. If you're looking at your watch, you're going to get in trouble. And I have looked at my watch, probably to my betterment though. Like I went down to Key West and I dove 90 feet. And I remember looking at my watch because it felt great. Like, I was so comfortable. I looked at my watch. I was like, oof. I was like, I probably should go back up. You know, I did not hang out. But it's an internal feeling. Like, you know, so one thing that you can always tell is you have a dive reflex, and like this, you have contractions is what it is. Did you see the latest? What movie was that? The Pandora? No, what is it? Is that what it's? The
Avatar?
Avatar. Thank you. Yeah, it's in
No, I
Pandora.
didn't. I didn't watch it.
All right. So yeah, I wouldn't watch it with my niece and nephew. You should go check it out. It's actually pretty cool. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. But there's a whole underwater thing. They do a lot of underwater stuff in this one. And as they're like running out of breath and like blacking out, they're like convulsing. Like you see them like kind of like their body like shaking like this. And it's very real. It's very realistic. So your body is what's going on is like, you know what your diaphragm is? It's like the muscle, the lining that separates your upper chest cavity with your heart and everything and lungs and everything from like your lower like stomach and intestines.
Yeah.
So we use our diaphragm. You can feel and like learn to like move your diaphragm. But what your diaphragm is doing when you're convulsing or contracting like that is it's moving rapidly down. So it's pulling down. It's trying to pull air into your mouth by like creating a vacuum in your lungs. So it's trying to drop. It's like intentionally dropping, which is trying to open your lungs and your mouth and try to pull air in. Because it's running out of oxygen. So that's like your body's natural reaction. And so your first contraction is usually your first indicator. And usually it's around a certain time. And people that breath hold train know when that comes in. Like when I'm above water, like I know what time that comes. Like I can go for 2.5 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes without even having my first contraction above water. But underwater, that happens around like a minute 15. And you don't, like they say you can go for like 7 contractions or something crazy, but I don't usually go after like 3 contractions. And so that's your timer right there. That lets you know. The tricky thing is, and where people can black out easily and why they recommend not to do this, is you can hyperventilate before you go down. Like you can hyperventilate above water before you go down. And what that'll do is that'll like rid a lot of CO2. So what's happening is like your urge to breathe, like this mental timer, comes from not from running out of oxygen, but from a buildup of CO2. This is a really interesting thing. So not from your body running out of oxygen, but from a buildup of CO2 is what gives you that urge to breathe, which tells your body, I need oxygen. It's not because it knows it needs oxygen. It knows that it's hitting a lot of CO2, which is a trigger for I need oxygen. But what you can do is if you hyperventilate before you go down, you're enriching your air that you have with just oxygen. You're getting out a lot of CO2 so that when you go down, that urge to breathe becomes later in the dive cycle. But here's the trick. Let's say I can legitimately hold my breath for 3 minutes underwater without blacking out. Okay. So I have a 3-minute window. Typically, if I don't hyperventilate, my trigger is like, I don't feel more comfortable than like a minute and a half underwater. I could go for another minute and a half, or I mean, for me, I mean, it's probably closer to 2.5 minutes before I would black out. So I've got this window, but now if I hyperventilate, I don't get that urge as near. So then that urge gets closer to like my actual limit, but my limit doesn't get extended. It's just that I don't feel that urge until later in the window. So I'm really pushing it. So I've ruined like my safety buffer from like a minute to like 30 seconds. And so now if you're down there chasing a fish or something, that's the number one thing that causes people to black out is like people chasing fish because you get distracted. I mean, you know how it is when you're running, or if you're in the sauna and you're like, you know, if you're thinking about something interesting or you're entertained, like time goes by. So if you're chasing a fish, time goes by. But if you're not, if you don't see fish or whatever, you're like, I'm going to come up. So if you already have a shortened window and you're pushing it and you see a fish, you're going to get really close. And in fact, I had one samba, which is like borderline blackout one time. And it was because I was down deep and I was chasing a fish. And I was really on the edge of all of it. And so, yeah, it's not good. It's not good. But I don't remember what the question was, but there you go.
I think you answered it. Dude, I have a gazillion more questions for you, but it's almost 5 and I know you got your meeting. So,
see,
normally
like time goes by.
it does. Time flies, dude. We've been chatting for almost 2 hours. I normally I ask everybody what's next for them in the 3 to 5 years, but you already answered that. So, any last nickels before we get out of here?
No, man. Good luck with everything. Good luck with coaching. I want to keep up to you and see what you're doing. I definitely want to stay in touch. So, and hopefully, I mean, you said people are gonna be paying me to come on here, but hopefully I have a hard time getting onto your podcast the next time you ask me because you've got so many other people going on.
Well, sure. Yeah, something like that. You know, I could always use more people for sure. Like it's tough to find people that are willing to take the time to do this that are busy people like yourself. Like
name's not Joe Rogan, so that's probably your first problem.
Yeah, I'm working on that, you know, legally changing the name. Maybe it'll help me out shave my head, you know.
Say the Roe Jogan podcast and maybe
the Roe Jogan. Yeah. I'd have to shrink like 3 or 4 inches and then just get really buff.
Yeah, dude.
And
save in the gym.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Always lovely conversation. We should for sure keep doing this. These are for sure my favorite ones where it's just like because you do so much interesting stuff and you know about the things that you're doing, which is like sounds like it shouldn't be surprising, but like the in-depth knowledge of like all the things, like when people are passionate about things, like I'll talk to freaking whoever, but like the part that sucks is like when you talk to somebody, you know, like why are you doing blank or what about this do you like? And it's like, oh, it's fun. It's like,
yeah.
But you know all the little details and all the little things and like you totally immerse yourself. Like we have 3 other things that we didn't even talk about. And then I still have to, before you stop doing quantum physics forever, I still need to have more questions about that. Yeah. So
yeah, I can tell you about the quantum computing world next time, or if I'm already retired, then I can teach people how to. That's what I want to teach people how to get to where I'm hoping to get to myself. But first, I feel like I got to do it first.
Well, that's why I'm saying people are gonna eventually once you do, like you're well on your way already. So like people are gonna like you'll see. I think because that happened to me. I was last anecdote before we go. One of my friends, he was a swim coach at UVA, and he had 2 swimmers that were trying to go to the Olympics. And he was like, "Yeah, they're down to like do it, but you gotta pay them." And I was like, "No." I was like, I can just talk to you about swimming. I'm not that interested in. Like, I like swimming, but you coach them, so you can tell me all the horrible things that they do. But yeah. I appreciate it, man. We should definitely do this again. For those, where can people find your fishing videos on Instagram?
G Josemans, so G and then my last name. Maybe I put it in like the comments on YouTube or something. But Yeah, I used to, last year I like posted all of my gym activities like every single day. This year I haven't figured out what I'm doing yet, but I'm going to do something different here soon and try to keep people active. I felt like the gym was getting boring. So maybe when I move to Virginia Beach, I'll be a lot more active this summer and show people what it's like. So I want to create more videos and more content. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for.
For sure. We'll stay in touch. It'll be good. All right, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Bye.